Good morning. It is Friday, and once again, this is Kathleen Booth here with my Friday video blog series. TGIF, everybody. I hope you're as happy that it's Friday as I am. I'm ready for the weekend, and I am ready for a barbecue outside in my backyard with hot dogs and hamburgers, maybe a margarita. But yeah, it's the weekend. The weekend is here. So before you leave for the weekend, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the topic of lead scoring, because this is something that has come up quite a bit recently with both some customers and prospects of mine, and I wanted to share some thoughts with you on this topic. Not everyone thinks about lead scoring right away. Very often when companies first start practicing inbound marketing, they are much more concerned with just generating leads, and that's totally understandable. We have a lot of companies that come to us and they say, you know, I have this website and it doesn't generate any leads for me. It's like a brochure. Totally common problem to have. And at that point, the biggest concern is usually just how do we start generating leads from our site? And so inbound marketing is great for that. You know, we put in place some blogs which are help to drive traffic. We create offers and gate those behind forms, and that's a really good way of pulling in leads. And when that starts to happen, when that inbound engine really begins to run, that's when we often get the question, okay, how do I know which of these leads is really worth following up on? Who do I call? Do I call everyone? Do I call some people? And the truth is, in the very beginning, I usually do tell my clients, call everyone. If you're starting with, you know, a low number of leads, if you haven't generated leads before, in the beginning, it's a good idea to just call everyone. And I'm not saying call everyone and try and sell them. That's not the idea. The idea is to call them and just say, hey, I saw that you downloaded our ebook or registered for our webinar, and I just wanted to call you and find out what were you hoping to get when you downloaded that or attended that webinar, and did you find what you were looking for? How could we make it better? You know, be helpful, talk to them, learn a little bit more about them, and maybe follow up that call with an email where you send some follow-on links to blogs that might be helpful to them. It's not about selling at that point. It's just really about making that connection, learning a little bit more about your prospect, and finding out what it was about your content that drove them to convert. So that's really a good first pass at what you do when you start to generate leads. But at some point, hopefully, if your inbound marketing is working, you can't call everybody, and you shouldn't call everybody. You have to focus your salespeople on the leads that are the best leads. So how do you know which are the best leads? There are a lot of great ways to create lead scoring formulas. You can do it manually. You can download everybody who's converting on your stuff, and based on the formula you have, you can score them. Or if you're using marketing automation software or you have a CRM, there are a lot of great tools today that have that functionality built in. We use HubSpot here at Quintain, and so some of the examples I'll give will come from that, but they're really applicable to a lot of other platforms. Whether you're using Marketo or Pardot or Eloqua, you should be able to do some lead scoring in any of those platforms. So how do you get started? The first step is really to download a list of all of your customers, current and past, and comb through that list and seek to understand what those customers have in common. So whether you're selling to a B2B or a B2C audience, you know, you should have a list of who those customers are, and hopefully there's some basic data in there about them. Things, demographics, like where are they located? What, if they're B2B, what industry are they in? If they're B2C, what gender are they? What age are they? That type of information is really, really helpful for beginning to understand the common threads that tie those customers together, because there are going to be commonalities, I guarantee you. So start by really looking at the demographics and diving in to see what those commonalities are. Now, if you're good with Excel, you can download your list to an Excel spreadsheet, and you can use pivot tables to really begin to analyze multiple data points and see where the commonalities are. If you're not really good at Excel, don't worry. I am not an Excel wizard, but I was able to learn how to do pivot tables fairly easily, just with some guidance from the internet. And so with the notes to this video blog, I'll include a link to some of those resources that I found really helpful on how to create a pivot table. And if you have some time, play around with it. It's great. It's an awesome way to start to crunch your data. And then you can feel like an Excel wizard when you're done, which is kind of how I feel after I build every pivot table. My staff laughs at me every time I talk about it because I get so excited. And I guess that's the marketing geek in me, but I love how it lets me really understand data better. So the idea is look for those commonalities. And then once you've found commonalities amongst your customers with their demographic information, then download a list of people who have not become customers, either people who represent deals that you've lost or people who haven't converted once they've become leads, and look for commonalities amongst them. What is it that they share that made them a poor fit for your company? So there are a lot of different things. It could be those very same demographics that made some people a good fit, it make other people a bad fit. Or it could be that they were really never a qualified prospect to begin with. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So here at Quintain, we have a lot of forms on our website, and anytime somebody converts on any form, they go into our list of leads. And I take a look at it, and sometimes I just have to laugh because they're not really leads for the business. They might be, for example, job applicants. So we actually use our HubSpot forms to manage our recruitment process. And while it's really good that we get a lot of conversions on those application forms, those are not prospective customers for Quintain. So I really need to weed them out when I'm looking at my list of business leads. And from a lead scoring standpoint, what I would do is assign a negative point value to those leads and really almost zero them out because they're not going to buy from me. Or, maybe they will someday, but the information I have about them right now indicates that they're not going to be a customer. So that concept of negative lead scoring is actually just as important as positive lead scoring. Another example of someone who you might want to negatively score is someone who's opted out of your email, for example, or a competitor. You can come up with a list of competitor domains, and anyone whose email ends in that sending domain could be excluded or zeroed out as well from a lead scoring standpoint. So those are a couple of things that you can look at from a demographics or explicit data standpoint. And explicit data is just data that someone has given you, either through the form they've filled out or through the way they've created their social profile. Like if they have a Twitter username and they say, husband, father of 3 in their description, that's explicit data because they've put it out there. The other type of data that we want to look at with lead scoring is what's known as implicit data. So implicit data is information that we can glean about our prospects based upon their behavior. And this is where having a really good analytics engine or a marketing automation software platform can help you a lot. So again, we use HubSpot, but there's plenty of others. But what I would look at for lead scoring are things like, how many pages of my website does someone who has become a customer tend to view before they convert or close, I should say. If the average customers looked at 25 pages, well, then I know if I have a prospect and they all of a sudden have looked at 25 pages of my site, that should be an indication that I need to take a closer look at that prospect because their behavior is similar to the behavior of somebody who's getting ready to buy from me. So it's not an absolute guarantee, but it's a really good indication that there's something going on there that makes them worth taking a closer look at. So the number of page views is always a really good one. The specific pages they're looking at. So for example, if you have a pricing page on your website, that's often a really great indication that somebody's considering purchasing from you, because the casual visitor who's just skimming your site for background information isn't necessarily going to care what your prices are. The only person who's really going to look at that normally is someone who is considering purchasing your services. So you could even set up a score that ranks people who visited particular pages on your site more highly than those who haven't. Other types of implicit data that are good to look at for lead scoring are things like, email opens, clicks, social engagement, all of those types of behavioral data points that would lead you to think somebody is more interested in your company maybe than a casual visitor, and that indicates that they might be further down in their buyer's journey. So lead scoring is really very custom to you as a company. I mean, it depends upon what you're selling. It depends upon who your ideal customers are. So there isn't a formula that I can give to you here today, but what I can say is you need to look at both the implicit and the explicit data. And the best way to do that, again, is to download your customer list and then to download the list of people who have not become customers, and start by looking at those commonalities and let that be your guide. And things that most people have in common, like if one of the really strong commonalities is everybody who's bought from you has looked at 25 or more pages of your site, that should really have a strong lead score. In other words, a strong point value associated with it. There might be some weaker indicators, like 50% of the people who've become customers have visited our pricing page. And if it's a slightly weaker indicator like that, you still want to score it, but maybe not as highly as the thing that has 100% commonality or 90% commonality. So this does get into kind of mathematical equations and probabilities. The biggest thing I would say to you is don't let that scare you off. And don't think you have to get lead scoring perfect out of the gate. So this is the biggest mistake that I see clients making, is that they get so focused on getting it right from the beginning that they really never get started. And it's that whole perfect is the enemy of good argument. The best thing for you to do is to start, throw some point values out there, begin to get a sense of what those commonalities are and begin to score your leads. And then as you look at who's getting those highest lead scores, see if that correlates with the people that are kind of engaging with you and are your hottest prospects, and begin to test your assumptions. You may go back in a month and figure out that that page view score was meaningless, but you have to start somewhere. So I guess that's what I would leave you with today, is start by looking at your customers, start by looking at your non-customers, begin to put some point values in place that relate back to what those populations have in common, and come back in a month and see if it worked. I would love to know if you actually try this and what you find with it. If you're successful, if you have difficulties, if it works, if your point values that you're assigning are yielding good leads for you. So try it out. Let me know. Post in the comments or tweet me at WorkMommyWork. I'd love to hear how it goes. All right, TGIF. See you next Friday.